Good afternoon, dear students. Today we will proceed with a type of tissue. First, before going to the details of the particular tissue, you should have to know what is tissue. Tissue, by definition, is a collection of some cells which are weaved together, is meant for some particular functions. There are several sorts of tissues, such as epithelial tissue, muscle tissue, nervous tissue, and one very much important tissue is the connective tissue. Now, to define, the connective tissue owes its name since it binds the other tissues of the body. But that does not mean that it is merely supportive in function. When you will grow up and become physicians, become good doctors, you will face lot of connective tissue diseases, and it is very much vast as this tissue is very widespread all over your whole body, because this is the tissue which supports the other tissues of the body, which binds the other tissues of the body and performs many essential functions by its own right. The connective tissue are derived from the embryonic mesoderm. Such a tissue possesses different types, such as general connective tissue, some special connective tissue, such as bone, which are under the heading of the sclerous tissue, hematopoietic tissue, that is blood and the related things. So, to study this particular topic, that is the connective tissue, we will first study about the general connective tissue. In other words, they are also named as or known as the ordinary connective tissue. Now, to continue with our connective tissue, we will divide the whole lecture into two separate classes. In the first class, in all of these two classes, we will cover the definition of the connective tissue, the components forming the connective tissue, the ground substance in specific, different types of fibers, types of connective tissue cells, their functions, and diseases of the connective tissue. Now, just already been said, to define the connective tissue are a group of tissues which connects or binds the other tissues of the body. So you can clearly say that the other tissues have specific areas of their residence, but the connective tissues, they are very widely distributed and distributed almost everywhere. So the connective tissue is a tissue which is mesodermal in origin, that consists of various cells as fibroblast, macrophages, some interlacing protein fibers such as collagen, which supports or forms the network for the anchorage of the cells. And they are embedded, all the things, that is the fibers, so also the cells, they are embedded in a huge amount of carbohydrate and protein-rich ground substance that supports, ensures, and binds together the other tissues. To know about the connective tissue, you should have an idea of the structure of the connective tissue. The main part of the connective tissue is the ground substance, which supports the cells, which helps in anchorage of the cells. And the ground substance are made up of some macromolecules and multi-adhesive glycoproteins. I will come into details. And there are some fibers which helps strengthening of the connective tissue, so also anchorage of the cells. And they are the reticular fiber, elastic fiber, and the collagen fiber. This is the vast component of the connective tissue. And the other component of the connective tissue, which are mainly lying in the connective tissue as a production site for the extracellular matrix or the ground substance. So also they have specific functions, and they are these cells. total 7 in number. They are the fibroblast, macrophages, mast cell, plasma cells, lymphocytes, leukocytes, and adipose cells. For easy remembrance of the connective tissue cells, better you follow these mnemonics, which explains it to be FMP2R. F stands for the fibroblast and fat cells, F2. M2 includes the macrophages, the mast cells. P said of the pigment cells and the plasma cells. And R stands for the reticular cells. So FMP2, each F, M and P are 2 in number, with R standing for the reticular cells. While studying, any of these cells can come as short note in your exams. Now, the first type of cells, and it is the most numerous cells. Everywhere, almost in your body, you will get this cell, that is the fibroblast. They are derived from the undifferentiated mesenchymal cells, flattened or fusiform in shape with a centrally placed nucleus. They do possess numerous cytoplasmic processes. Fibroblast, when it is young, it is said as fibroblast because it has the capacity to proliferate. And they have open-faced nucleus, rich in Golgi apparatus, endoplasmic reticulum, mitochondria. But when the fibroblast loses its function, so also lose its configuration, becomes old, the same cell is called the fibrocyte, which has scanty cytoplasm, flattened and hyperchromatic nucleus, and very scanty organelles. Main functions are they help chiefly in the formation of the collagen and partly in the reticulin and the elastin fibers, which is the main fibrous component of the connective tissue. This takes active participation in wound healing. Whenever after a deep cut, you will see that the cut is being held up with some glistening tissue. And that glistening tissue is majorly the granulation tissue, which has the major component of fibroblast. So the fibroblasts are most numerous and take active participation of your wound healing. They also act as stem cells for the other cellular component of the connective tissue. Many other the cellular components of the connective tissue are produced from the fibroblast. This is an young fibroblast having a centrally placed nucleus with lots of irregular cytoplasmic processes. And when the same cells grows older, becomes flattened with less number of processes, less organelle, flattened nucleus, it is called the fibrocyte. Now, the second type of the connective tissue cells, it is known as the macrophage. Phage means having the capacity to engulf, and macro means bigger in size. So this type of cells are present all over, almost everywhere, having different sorts of names. They are less numerous than the fibroblast. In resting phase, they do have multiple processes by which they do anchor themselves to the connective tissue fibers. But when there is a need, such as an infection and foreign body reaction is produced in the body, some infection needs to be controlled, the cells get themselves free from the fibers. They become ovoid and have the amoeboid movement to reach to the site. They take part actively in your body defense mechanism. They are very much important under the heading of the mononuclear phagocytic system, consist of some cells, some tissues, which takes active participation in the body protective mechanism. Here, in the architecture of the macrophages, the cytoplasm of the macrophage having numerous lysosomes. with hydrolytic enzymes. And these are helpful for lysis of the foreign particles that is to be engulfed. Get the names very clearly now and register in your mind that the macrophages are different in names at different location of your body, and you have to remember it. In the connective tissue, they are named as histiocytes or plasmatocytes. In the blood, they are monocytes. In sinusoids of liver, they are known as Kupffer cells. In lymphoid tissues, they are reticular cells. And in lung alveoli, they are alveolar phagocytes. In brain and spinal cord, they are known as the microglia. All these of the cells having the same sort of characteristic and same sort of function. Only as per their distribution to the particular tissue where they lies, their name varies. The macrophages are derived from the undifferentiated mesenchyme, like any other connective tissue cells, or from the fibroblast. As I have already said, the fibroblast take participation as stem cells for production of some other connective tissue cells. They are also coming from the monocytes of the blood, and they are widely distributed all over your body to form a part of the mononuclear phagocytic system, which in short known as the MPS. So, macrophages do actively take participation in the defense mechanism of your body. They do phagocytose and digest the particulate foreign organic material. And when bigger infection, it is a chronic infection, some of the macrophages do fuse with one another and to form a giant cell. There is different types of the giant cells. You will get entered in your physiology, in your pathology classes further. And the giant cells are definitely, the name says, they are bigger in size. They have multiple nuclei. These cells are present in the different situations of chronic infection, such as sarcoidosis, such as tuberculosis, giant cell tumor, and so on. These macrophages helps in the formation of T and B lymphocytes also. See, this is the macrophages, quite bigger in size. The macrophages, when to engulf the foreign particles, they form these cytoplasmic small granules. And these cytoplasmic granules, when stained with vital dyes such as tryptophan blue, lithium carbene, or Indian ink, they will appear as this deep purplish or bluish in color. And this is another microscopic picture of the giant cell. You can see the big outline of the cell with multiple nuclei inside it. Okay, this is another one. This one is another. This one is another. And seen in some chronic infection, I have already named. The next type is the plasma cells. Plasma cells are mainly lying attached to the mucus and the submucous coat of the gut in the greater omentum. They are rounded in shape, granular cytoplasm, which is basic state. Also a very important cell in the mononuclear phagocytic system part, as like macrophages. The plasma cells are rounded in shape. They have deeply stained cytoplasm. And this cytoplasm is deeply stained because of intense and heavy concentration of the ribosomes, which are protein secreting granules in the cells. And they are attached to the endoplasmic reticule. The specific characteristic and the specific microscopic feature to identify the cell under the microscope is the presence of the clumping chromatin in the nucleus, which are present in the form of cartwheel. And this cartwheel nucleus is the diagnostic point of the plasma cells under the microscope. Their main function is the liberation of the humoral antibodies. Whenever any foreign particle enter your body, some cells get activated for the cellular mechanism of immunity. And so also some antibodies are produced which acts against those foreign particles. And this sort of body protection system is known as the humoral immunity. The plasma cells is a definitive source of the humoral antibodies. The plasma cells are a typical source of these antibodies. Must remember that the plasma cells are not present before birth. They do develop after birth. They do develop from the Barca equivalent or the bone marrow lymphocytes. Therefore, in case of newborn, the antibody production is very minimal. Malignant transformation of these plasma cells leads to a cancer that is known as myeloma. See, these are the big plasma cells with basophilic cytoplasm. Here is the nucleus in the form of the cartwheel appearance because of the clumping of the chromatin. This is a schematic representation, and the plasma cells are responsible for the production of these antibodies. The different sorts of immunoglobulins you will encounter in your physiology and pathology classes. Now, the next type of the cells, one of the very important cell of the connective tissue cells is the mast cells. They are present along the fibrous capsule of the liver, along the inner wall of the blood vessels, along the mucosa of the alimentary and the respiratory tract. They are rounded with central nucleus. Cytoplasm is closely packed with membrane-bound granules formed of sulfated mucopolysaccharides, which appear purple when stained with toluene blue. Now, the importance of the mast cells are their secretion. The different cytoplasmic granules in the mast cells, they do produce the heparin, histamine, hexosaminidase, eosinophil chemotactic factor, and neutrophil chemotactic factor. And these particular materials have some definitive functions in your body, such as heparin is a chief anticoagulant naturally circulating in your body. Heparin helps preventing the fibrinogen, which is continuously escaping from the blood capillaries into the tissue space following any injury, and their conversion to fibrin. Whenever fibrinogen is converted to fibrin, the blood clots and that site of bleeding is sealed. And the mast cell, by secretion of the heparin, prevent this fact. Thus, the blood that is flowing inside the blood vessels can remain in liquid form. So, the heparin is a naturally occurring anticoagulant that is keeping the blood in liquid form inside the vessels. On the other way, the mast cell produce histamine, which promotes the capillary leakage and edema and contraction of the smooth muscles. Sometimes the antibodies, such as immunoglobulin E, are absorbed on the surface of the mast cells and fail to move when the specific antigen enters the body. Now, an antigen-antibody reaction takes place on the surface of the mast cells. Eventually, the mast cell release the histamine, which produce anaphylactic allergic reaction. That is an acute sort of allergic reaction. And the antihistaminic drugs, they do not act by preventing the release of the histamine from the mast cells, but they occupy the receptors where these histamine will go to bind to perform its functions. So these two particles, that is heparin and the histamine, in the functional part of the mast cell is very, very, very important. So also the other factors, hexosaminidase, eosinophil, and neutrophil chemotactic factor, they do active participation to combat the acute entrance of any foreign particle inside your body. See, this is a schematic diagram of the mast cells with lots of granules, cytoplasmic granules inside the cytoplasm of the mast cells. which are stained as dark purple when treated with toluene blue dye. And these are the sites of the immunoglobulin, such as immunoglobulin E, anchorage onto the surface of the mast cells, where when the antigen, any foreign particle, attaching to those immunoglobulin E produce an allergic reaction, which are responsible for the production of the different sorts of the particles, such as histamine, hexosaminidase, ECF, and NCF from these cytoplasmic granules. Now, the next cell is pigment cells. The pigment cells, as the name says, that they are responsible or loaded with some pigments. Here, mainly referring to the melanocytes. They are present inside the epidermis of the skin. So also where the coloration of your body tissue are present, such as iris, choroid, that is the second layer of the eye. They have long cytoplasmic processes and melanin granules in the melanosomes. They are formed from the neural crest cells. Must remember the neural crest cells coming from the apical part of the developing neural tube. And you will get details of these neural crest cells repeated times. It will come to your study and very important theory question. So this is one of the derivative of the neural crest cells. All the other cells are derived from the mesenchymal, undifferentiated mesenchymal cells. And this is specifically that the melanocytes are derived from the neural crest cells. And the melanin that is produced inside the melanosomes, which are responsible for the coloration of your skin. So also the other parts, coloration of your skin helps the skin to protect from the cosmic rays of the sun. See, this is the melanocyte with lots of cytoplasmic processes, which lying in the epidermis invades to the superficial layers. And there is a mechanism. This is propiomelanocortin is gradually converted with the stimulation of the alpha melanocyte stimulating hormone to stimulate these melanocytes, which produce the melanin granule inside the melanosomes, inside the melanocytes. And they are invading the surface cells, which will give protection to the cosmic rays to the superficial layer of the skin. The reticular cells, they are present in reticular connective tissue. The type of tissue has already been said earlier. They are branched flattened cells with poorly staining nuclei and cytoplasm. They produce reticular fibers. Their functions are mainly phagocytic, ingest and remove bacteria. They act as stem cells for the cellular constituents of the blood. You can see this irregular appearance of the reticular cells with lots of cytoplasmic processes, and they do form a network-like structure in the reticular connective tissue. Now, the very important cell is the second F, that is the fat cells, which are present almost everywhere, only in some part of your body, some areas which are fat-free. The fat cells are also called the adipocytes. They are numerous in the adipose tissue. Their appearance is almost spherical as the fat people look. The cytoplasm, it is loaded with fat granules having the central fat lobule. Thus, the cytoplasm along with the nucleus is lying as a rim at the surrounding of the cells. So that when H and E stain, hematoxylin and eosin stain is used to stain the fat cells, they will appear as signet ring because all the fats will get washed up following the staining procedure. But when they are particularly stained with some specific dyes such as Sudan black, Sudan 3, scarlet R, and then fat globule will appear black. And the fat cells mainly are supportive in functions. They are the storehouse of the fat and the energy. As the fat cells are loaded with the fat granules in time of long-term starvations, these fat are utilized by the body via a process known as neoglucogenesis. This is the schematic representation of the adipocyte. You can see that fat reservoir having big inside the vacuole, and the cytoplasm is distributed at the periphery of the cell, so that the cell appeared as the signet ring in appearance. And when stained with Sudan black, Sudan 3 scarlet R, this fat part is stained dark black, and they will appear like black structures. This fat is stained, they will appear as black. Here I am ending the cellular part of the connective tissue. So to summarize, in this presentation, we have encountered with the connective tissue, which is very wide in distribution, almost everywhere in your body. They do connect the other tissues of the body. They take active participation in supporting the other tissues. So also they have some participation in your immune mechanism, in your wound healing mechanism. Mainly we have come through the part that is, it has two components. What is cellular component, having the mnemonic of FMP2R, fat cells, fibroblast, macrophages, mast cells, plasma cells, pigment cells, and reticular cells. And in the next presentation, in continuation of our study with the connective tissue, we will encounter the ground substance and its different types of fibers, the different types of ground substance, and the function of the connective tissue as a whole. Let's have a look of all the slides. So also go through your books, take help of your teacher if you don't understand anything, and you can ask me question you are not understanding or anything difficulty you are facing. And from this part, the question may come. First of all, any of the type of the cells of the connective tissue may come as your short note. They will come as your MCQ, specifically the dyes and all. Mast cells is very important catchy part for the examiners. So also the plasma cells, the macrophages. So go through your books, study hard so that you can flourish. And before going to the next chapter of the ground substance of connective tissue, you must have a solid knowledge of the connective tissue cells. So thank you for the time being, students. We will meet soon with the second part of our connective tissue class. Good day.